There was once a young door-to-door salesman who stopped at the farm to visit with the farmer and see what he could sell him. And there was the farmer sitting on his front porch in his rocking chair, rocking back and forth. The young man said to him, "I have a book here that can tell you how to farm 10 times better than you are farming right now." The farmer didn't say anything. He just kept rocking back and forth. And then he said to the man, "Young man, I don't need your book to tell me how to farm 10 times better than I am. I already know how to do that." And he kept on rocking in his chair. Like the rich young man in the gospel, the farmer knew what it was to go beyond the minimum. He just didn't have the commitment to do it. He knew how to go beyond the 10 Commandments in a sense, but he lacked the commitment to carry it out. That was the problem with the rich young man in the gospel today. He already knew, but he failed to carry it out. Jesus, who owned nothing except his clothes and his sandals, and maybe the house that Mary lived in, is able to teach us who own something at least how to handle it, how to take care of it, how to deal with it. There's a story about Paul Getty, who was the CEO of Getty Oil Company, who died in 1976 of a heart attack. He left $3 to $4 billion to his 3 sons. This was a huge amount of money in those days. Today, it doesn't seem like a lot for someone to leave behind anymore who's filthy rich. But that's how much he left behind. Paul Getty was highly educated. He spoke most of the European languages. He understood Russian, Arabic, Latin, and Greek. He married 5 times. He said, "I would give all my wealth for a successful marriage." He even admitted that money did not give him happiness. In fact, it many times gave him nothing but unhappiness. And yet, deep down inside, he still was so connected to his money that he refused to give anything to charity because he said it made people lazy. And he gave no money to the needy and the needy, as it was unrewarding for him, and he felt it was wrong. He wrote a couple books, one of which is "It's Tough to Be a Billionaire," and the other one, "How to Be Rich." Reminds you of anyone? Certainly of that young man of the gospel, who seemed to be doing the commandments correctly, except he forgot the most important of them. The first reading today tells us about the gift of prudence. The gift of prudence is a virtue that is built upon humility. Solomon asked for wisdom. He did not ask for riches, he did not ask for power, but God gave him what he asked for, which was wisdom, and all the other things came as a result. You see, that reading comes to us in the context of exactly the same thing we're living through right now. Because there was an Alexandrian Jew, Alexandria, Egypt, who wrote the book that we read from in the first reading today. And those Jews were a minority within the city of Alexandria. Such a minority, in fact, they almost found themselves oppressed by the Greek culture. The Greek culture, its philosophy, and its paganism. And so many of the Jewish people were falling away. They stopped practicing their faith because of this surrounding culture that they lived in. And so this writer of the reading that you read today is trying to plumb the depths of it and trying to help us understand how it is that we can stay true to our faith in the midst of this culture that is so oppressive to us. You see, the book of wisdom basically tells us about the gift of prudence. And the gift of prudence enables us to do 2 things. It enables us to see the things of God as God sees them. To see the things of God as God sees them. Prudence was given me, as it says in that reading today. We see then one's true God in any given circumstances, so we know what to aim for. We see our good. We know what our good is in every circumstance, and we can choose it. That's what prudence does for us. It enables us to choose what is good. It also helps us to discover and choose the means by which we attain that good. It is the second most important virtue after humility. Experience, without a doubt, perfects prudence. Without a doubt, we talk about immature people. They are known for choosing short-term pleasures over long-term worthy goals. We often say about someone, he's just not grown up yet. Even though the rich young man never killed, never stole, never committed adultery, he was breaking both of the most important commandments. The commandment against idolatry and love of neighbor. Because he worshipped his wealth more than he worshipped God. For in his wealth, he focused his security and his social status. That's what he couldn't give up. That's why he went away sad. He trusted more in himself than God. He failed to follow Jesus, therefore, when he was invited to do so. It was just too hard to do. He went away sad. Now, we are not all called to radical poverty, like a St. Francis or many of the great saints who died with no earthly possessions. No, we are called to contemplate the issue of sacrifice in our lives. When it comes to generosity and how we are able to control this thirst for grabbing at things, this thirst for owning things, because it gives us some sort of security, we actually practice the gift of generosity in two different ways. We can practice generosity from the perspective of, I sacrifice until it feels good. The next step, though, is I sacrifice until it hurts. Because then we're starting to really get at what we have and start seeing it as being, how much do I place my faith in all of that I own? You see, what happens with riches is that it gives us a false sense of independence. Because I become sufficient in myself. I don't need anybody else. I'm sufficient in myself by my possessions. It also shackles me to the earth. It keeps me from looking at that which comes after death. I become so comfortable with the here and now. It literally makes us selfish. Because the gift itself is what gets in the way of our relationship with God. Having been here long enough, 5 to 6 years, many stories in our area that I've heard, unfortunate stories, where people's gifts had strings attached to them. And someone would say, perhaps to an old pastor in the past, if you do that, you'll never see any of my money again. Stories in our community. So that's what wealth can do. It makes us into being self-sufficient in and of ourselves and in control of how it is to be spent. You see, an avarice person is one who has greed in his heart, and he is never happy because he's always looking for ways in which he can make more. Now, Jesus doesn't say that riches are the problem. It's the attitude towards our riches that's the problem. Who were two of his best friends? Zacchaeus and Joseph of Arimathea. both of whom were wealthy. But they figured it out. Zacchaeus says, I plan on giving, etc., back to those that I have stolen, fourfold, or whatever it was he did. He changed as a result of meeting Jesus. Joseph of Arimathea did the same thing with his own generosity. Jesus never condemned anyone for being rich. But what he did do was he did point out to us that it can indicate a disordered attachment. And if it's a disordered attachment, then it is not following commandment number 1, which places God first in all things. Because basically what happens is things become more important than people. I end with a quote from Teresa of Calcutta, who said, do something beautiful for God. Do it with your life. Do it every day. Do it your own way.